Welcome everyone to our webinar today for exploring trauma relief and mental health psychosocial support for Ukrainian displaced population. We will have two presentations on evidence-based approaches. Let's give it a couple minutes for all the attendees to join us. In the meantime, it will be great if our attendees joining could let us know from which countries you are joining today. Thanks a lot. My name is Pamela Núñez. I'm the Mental Health Advocacy Advisor at SOS Children's Villages International, based in Vienna, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Okay, I see here greetings from Croatia, from Norway, great. From Italy, from Rome. Lithuania, Colombia, South Africa, India, wow. Lithuania. Bosnia, Hungary. Great, we have a very diverse audience. Ukraine. For the Ukrainian audience, please notice that we have Ukrainian interpretation. You can click in the interpretation button and go to the Ukrainian speaking side. We have an amazing interpreter supporting us. Greetings from Greece. From Ethiopia. Great.
Different. Yes. Yeah.
Let's wait a couple more minutes to move forward. Okay, perfect. Let's move on. Then welcome once again to our webinar. Just to let our attendees know, we will have two online surveys. So one conducted at the beginning of this webinar, so in a couple minutes, and another one at the end. We would really appreciate if you could help us answering these polls. Please have in mind the webinar is being recorded and will have both versions, English and Ukrainian, being available on the Child Hub platform. We'll make sure to send the link for recording to all attendees. We unfortunately don't have the microphone function available for general attendees. So if you do have some questions regarding the content or any technical issues, please feel free to write into our chat, into the chat featured. And as I said before, we do have Ukrainian interpretation taking place. If you wish to listen to the webinar in this language, kindly press into the interpretation button. Maybe let's move on, Heidi, to the projection of the poll, of the first poll. All right, we'll have a couple minutes for our attendees to provide us with their answers. Okay, Heidi, I believe all the attendees have answered. Great. Then let's get started. Our agenda for today's webinar, I will provide a brief introduction on the webinar objectives, plus some background on our speakers of today. Then Dr. Katrien Herzog will provide the International Association for Human Values evidence-based psychosocial approach for trauma relief. We will have a short Q&A. So we do hope that you can, if you have some questions, please type them into the chat box. They will also be translated into, if the questions are in Ukrainian, they will be translated into English. Then we will proceed to explore the MGSC methodology and how it emerged as an evidence-based methodology presented by Alketa Lascu from Terre des Hommes. We'll also have a small Q&A session. And at the end, we will be providing information on resources. Perfect. Then our speakers for today, as I had previously mentioned, Dr. Katrien Herzog. She's a peace-building researcher, trainer, and practitioner with 25 years of experience at the intersection of mental health, psychosocial support, and peace building in both academy and the nonprofit sector. She has pioneered psychosocial peace building to enhance peace building impact and advocates for its inclusion in international policy and practice. She is currently the director for the trauma release and peace building programs at the International Association for Human Values. And she holds a PhD in peace building from the University of Leuven and has trained over 2,500 individuals globally. She also directs the Association for Human Values in Belgium, which is a partner in the EU-funded Peace of Mind, Strength of Heart project. The International Association for Human Values is a global NGO focused on mental health and psychosocial support for displaced populations, war-affected populations, and humanitarian personnel. Its evidence-based techniques have supported hundreds of thousands of people in conflict zones, including Ukrainian children and adults in the EU through the Peace of Mind and Strength of Heart project, and Katrien will provide an overview later on during her presentation. Our second speaker for today is Alketa Lascu. Alketa is the Global Safeguarding Advisor at Terre des Hommes headquarters. She has a background in clinical psychology and a master's in social innovation and management from Vienna University. She has over 13 years of experience and has developed and implemented child welfare programs and provided technical expertise in child protection and safeguarding across Europe, including Ukraine, Romania, Moldova, Hungary, Greece, Albania, and Kosovo. She currently advises globally on safeguarding and has collaborated with organizations with the EU in Safeguarding and Resource Hub and the Promise Network. Alketa has also authored numerous publications and played a key role in the advocacy networks contributing to policy development at regional and global levels. This event, our webinar for today, is being coordinated and organized by two projects. So the two HADEA-funded projects, the Peace of Mind, Strength of Heart project, and the Well You project. I would like to give the floor now to Dr. Katrien Hertrog to begin her presentation. I will stop my screen now.
Yes, thank you very much, colleagues, for organizing this webinar and bringing us together to discuss still very current topics, and welcome to all the participants, attendees online. I will share my presentation. So what I would like to share with you today is an approach that is very effective and can be implemented on a large scale. So I think we all understand that millions of people around the world, in Ukraine, outside Ukraine, but also across the world, are deeply affected by stress and trauma. And our traditional approaches of therapy or medicines are definitely not sufficient, and also often not attractive to people. So we have, what I would like to present is the approach of the International Association for Human Values, which has been implemented since a few decades around the world in all different contexts of violence, war, trauma, refugees, huge stress, and which is scalable. People can learn it. They can learn tools to help themselves to support their own well-being on a really big scale and in an effective way. And this is what we would like to present today. It's a biopsychosocial approach. So just a little bit about the organization. It's based in Geneva, but nobody is there because everybody is working on the ground. It's a volunteer-based organization, and the mission is to really build a sustainable peace by strengthening human values on an individual basis, but also in all the sectors of society. So in education, in health, in criminal justice, economic sector, etc. So the main aim in terms of peace building is to restore the well-being and the health of people, as well as to break the cycles of violence, continuous cycles of violence on domestic level, geopolitical levels, intergenerational levels, and to really lay the foundation for a culture of peace. So it's a broad, comprehensive approach with different focus areas. To give you an idea about the work of IHV around the world and how it can be implemented in different contexts, I want to give a few examples. So the first is for sure stress and trauma relief. For both natural and man-made disasters. You can see a list of conflict areas where we worked, but also in refugee camps around the world after terrorist attacks. From Middle East to Africa to Asia to Europe, United States. But we also work with on prevention of extremism and radicalization of children. For example, children affected by the wars in Lebanon and Syria, to support them, their families, and their caretakers. We also work with war veterans who suffer from PTSD and have huge difficulties reintegrating back in society afterwards. We have consistently worked in Iraq, for example, especially on youth and women empowerment programs since 2004. Another example is the COVID epidemic, where we supported online tens of thousands of healthcare workers to boost their resilience and well-being, while they were also doing critical work and under huge stress. I will share, of course, about our current work for Ukrainians inside Ukraine and those who are displaced outside. We also work with people who are engaged in armed conflict or in violence as rebel groups, militants, to rehabilitate and reintegrate them in mainstream society. and to help them pursue their aspirations and goals through other means, non-violent means. And another example is also the prisons. We work in more than 60 countries in the prisons, and now close to 1 million prisoners have undergone this kind of programs. So there's a wide possibility of application through the approach that I want to present right now. Like I said, to break the cycles of violence, to provide and restore well-being and health in conflict situations. So in the process, we worked with different agencies, international agencies, local authorities, national authorities, NGOs, INGOs, a whole range of very varied partners from around the world, as well as some universities. Now, to give you an idea of specifically the trauma programs, so that it becomes not too little more concrete, we have many programs, more than 50, but I want to focus on those specifically designed for this kind of contexts. So we have Healing, Resilience, Empowerment Workshop. As you notice, it's not called Trauma Relief Workshop. It's very open, very accessible for anybody who feels that they can use support to sleep better, to raise their energy levels, to calm down the mind, to reduce general stress and get more energy and hope actually to face challenges and situations. So it's very short, it's only 1.5 hours, and we do it normally 3 days in a row. So very accessible, very safe, and still very effective workshop. And then we have a more advanced program, which we conduct over 4 days, 3 hours every day. And this is for people who are not in the acute, like traumatized condition, who are a little bit more stable, because we have a more powerful techniques there, which are designed for deeper trauma relief. It's the SKY technique, which I will talk about a little later. And we also have a program to support those who are supporting traumatized populations. So all the service providers, mental health professionals. So these are the main programs which I will talk about today. And where do we apply them? Everywhere. So to give you an idea, at the moment we are working in Lebanon, in Israel, as much as possible with Palestinians, but we also worked with Syrian, Lebanese populations before, with Afghans who fled the Taliban regime, with people who are facing repression in their own countries, arrests, torture, survivors of domestic violence. We work in the United States, where whole communities are affected by school shootings, with political prisoners, etc., etc. There's a wide variety of contexts. So what is important to know is that it's a comprehensive approach that goes from the physical level to the deeply existential level and everything in between. So it's definitely not just a cognitive approach. It includes the body, emotions, the mind, our sense of identity, how it reflects in behavior, in relationships, in our outlook towards the world, and our sense of existence, the meaning of life, the trust that we can have in existence, in humanity. So many, many different aspects, which I can only share more about during a program, not in a short presentation. But to give you an idea, of course, if we touch on so many levels, we also need many different methods. So the programs consist of different methods, physical exercises for sure, but also powerful breathing techniques, relaxation exercises, cognitive input, life skills, games, personal reflection, discussions. So very varied programs. from half an hour to even 10 days. We have a lot of variety in how to adapt our programs for different populations and different contexts. So what is very specific about the approach, because many organizations, of course, work in the psychosocial sphere, that we have explicitly this bio element. So we work with the body in such a way that we restore the possibility to be peaceful. Because with a lot of trauma and stress in the system, our autonomous nervous system often doesn't calm down. It doesn't re-regulate itself when the stress is chronic or intense, or when trauma is stored in the body. And it's, as it says, the autonomous nervous system is autonomous. We cannot really do much about it. We cannot talk our system out of the stress response system that it is functioning in. So here is why the breath is very important, because the breath is part of the autonomous nervous system. So it can regulate the autonomous nervous system, and we can regulate the breath. It's the only part of the autonomous nervous system which we can influence. And we can change our breath, right? If you want to take a deep breath, you can do so. If you want to breathe faster, you can also do so. So by starting to breathe in different ways, we have a very profound effect on our autonomous nervous system. So the fight, flight, freeze response, which is naturally embedded in our system, sometimes it doesn't go back to the homeostasis, to the original relaxed state. Yeah, so with the breath, we can actually regulate, so that we don't stay all the time hyper alert, hyperactive, can't sleep, or the opposite, we are isolated, depressed, and inertia. There are many different symptoms. So we change the physiology for people to be able to physically feel rested and peaceful, but also mentally. Because when we are in a stressful situation, the older parts of the brain are active and responding. It's not necessarily cognitive. Yeah, the frontal parts of the brain, which are more for decision making, orientation, emotion regulation, they're not. They're often dysfunctional when the stress is very high. So when we can reduce the stress levels, these parts of the brain that interpret and perceive and process the information and orient ourselves in life, in context, they become again more functional. So it's a deeply physical, psychological, mental, emotional kind of intervention that we are bringing here, and very effective and cost-effective. There is quite some research on this breathing technique. Some of you may have practiced it already. For some of you, it may be new information. But for example, on the website here on the left, you can find more than 100 scientific articles on these kind of breathing techniques. Yeah, to give you an idea, it shows that depression, anxiety, and PTSD go down significantly, around 70%, when people practice regularly for 1 to 3 months. So this is apparently a similar outcome as medication, but of course without negative side effects. It is self-empowering and very cost-effective. But also improvement in sleep, improvement in immunity, blood pressure, mental focus, emotional regulation, and even they found out that there is an effect on the expression of DNA. So the beneficial DNA is strengthened and the one that is not beneficial is reduced. I'm not an expert in this, but it was a groundbreaking kind of research that even on the genetic level, we can actually improve mental and physical health through this set of breathing techniques. I hope my translator is following. I'm doing my best not to speak too fast. So, just to capture a little bit how these kind of programs can work complementary to the approaches that already exist and which have shown their effect. Like I said, to address a big, massive need in society, it's important that they are scalable and multipliable. We can easily train new trainers also in this kind of approach, and we can reach large groups, 50 people together, 100 people if needed. So I already mentioned evidence-based, effective, holistic, easily accessible. Yes, so stigma is not so much an issue here. It's also very easy to learn. You don't need any special skills. Yeah? As long as you breathe, you can join these kind of workshops. Cost-effective, inclusive. Yeah, we also have trainers from all nationalities, religions, who can culturally adapt the workshops. And very important, it's self-empowering. So, coming to Ukraine, our volunteer teams have started workshops from the very start of the war. So now around 8,000 Ukrainians have participated in these workshops, both inside Ukraine as well as 5,000 Ukrainians who find themselves outside Ukraine. This includes now 2,500 children as well. So they share a lot of positive feedback on all levels. What we hear the most is that they have hope again, energy and hope to continue living. And the second feedback that we get the most is that they are able to sleep. So we have started on a little later Peace of Mind project, specifically for Ukrainians, to strengthen and maintain their own well-being. It's running in 3 countries, Poland, Lithuania, Germany, and also online. So Ukrainians can join online every week, wherever they find themselves. 2.5 years, our teams are conducting every week seminars. So there are 3 components. The first is the workshops for Ukrainians, adults and children. The second is for the service providers and the mental health professionals who work with Ukrainian and other displaced people in Europe. The third aspect is to provide training for new trainers, so to increase the capacity of this approach towards the future. And then we also hope that it can be integrated more in different systems and institutions to increase the effectiveness of our impact for the well-being of people and also to reduce the costs. So we have 6 programs. I already mentioned most of them. So the Healing, Resilience, Empowerment Workshop, the very short one, and the little more intense program. Then we have the same for children, then for the mental health professionals and service providers, the training of trainers, and we also have follow-up sessions. So people can come to weekly follow-up sessions online or offline, as much as we can provide it. So coming a little bit towards the end, we want to share the results that we gathered through this project based on a self-assessment questionnaire. Yes, so how people feel right after the workshop. And we see that 80 to 90% feels better on several indicators. Yes, so whether it is stress or the sleep or the energy level, the anxiety, anger, focus of mind, 80 to 90% of people indicate improvement. We also used the questionnaires, which are internationally validated, Sprint and DAS, to measure the improvement in depression, stress, PTSD, and anxiety. And we found that there are statistically significant reductions. So also, when we ask them if they find it helpful or if they would recommend the workshop, if they intend to practice it, we have very, very high percentages, like 97 and above. So basically, more than 90% of participants indicate that their symptoms improve after participating. So we worked intensely with the Red Cross in Lithuania, with the International Organization for Migration, to give you an idea of the kind of partnerships that we can actually develop with established organizations. So we work together in a complementary way. Also in Poland, we work together with UNHCR in the refugee response plan, and we organized a lot of camps for children. And this also included camps for Ukrainian children who came from Ukraine for a holiday. Sometimes groups whose parents are absent or died in the war as well. And here is an example of groups of Ukrainians who have been trained to give the healing, resilience, and empowerment workshop. So they themselves first participated in the workshop, then in the program, then in a more intense training of trainers, and then they have a supervision period. So many are now actively teaching these workshops across Europe and also inside Ukraine. And then the last point is, of course, the support for the mental health professionals themselves, as well as for other service providers. It's now more than 2.5 years, and the energy and resilience may not be so strong anymore. So we really are available to support people who need it, also with the same approach, 9 hours for professionals. And we have 2 trainings coming up in October and November, which you can see on the screen. And then I will finish with some contact details and just open the floor maybe for some questions or any aspects you would like to know more about.
Thank you so much, Katrin. I think we can leave the slide on while we address some of the questions that we have received in the chat. I have 4 questions in total. Katrin, the first one colleague asked if you could share specific outcomes of testimonials from the Peace of Mind project that demonstrated effectiveness in the Ukrainian context.
That's challenging because we have hundreds. So,
which should I use?
so to give you an example, we have this. We had this lady from Kherson. She was living under occupation for quite some time. The city was bombed and attacked. Then they managed to escape in the end, but they got injured along the way. Finally, they ended up in Lithuania, and after a few months, they ended up in our workshop. Now, this lady was crying the whole time. Her tears, she couldn't stop. There was such a clear PTSD state. She also found that the fireworks that were around New Year were upsetting. She was totally lost. She had a huge business back home. She had a social status. They had everything, and now they had nothing and nothing to do. And she was always very strong in her life, managing people at home, etc., and totally broke down. So we noticed that with this, with every session, she became better and better. And then at the end, she was even sharing, it's life is so beautiful again, and her tears stopped, and she felt so empowered to bring these techniques back to Ukraine. And she just started smiling again. And that is like after just a few sessions from such a desperate state where everything is lost, no way out, medicine doesn't work, sleeping pills don't work, the mind doesn't stop, and to bring that clarity and strength and energy back. And this is like just one example, but they're all very powerful and meaningful. Maybe I can post in the chat a little later some of the videos, and then you can watch many more testimonials, how it works really for people in practice.
Thank you so much, Katrien, for that beautiful experience and example. That's great to hear for us. We had another question. It says, what are the key challenges in integrating your approach? How can mental health professionals contribute to this process? I think it's more on scaling up your approach. What have been the main challenges, and how can mental health professionals contribute?
Yes, thank you for that question. It's very important. In the beginning, when we started 2.5 years ago, there was a lot of demand in the sense, or a lot of openness. People were looking. But now we find that the need is still there, but people are occupied with many different aspects of life, understandably, but the needs are still there. And definitely inside Ukraine, we feel there is huge need. So the main challenge that we had was that we cannot reach the people, or as many people as we would like, to at least inform them about this approach so that they know about it and can actually choose to enroll or not. So the best way for us, is to spread the message through networks, through contacts, through platforms, so that people know about it. This has been the biggest challenge basically for us. And we are very happy that some psychologists who really had a hard time themselves, they go through everything themselves, very traumatizing experiences inside Ukraine. Then they are working like around the clock for such a long time to support other people. And they really, some of them were really in a critical state, but they also participated in the programs, and it helped them so quickly and so easily, so effectively, that they are also referring their clients to enroll in these workshops. And this is very helpful, because in this way we can also reach people who really need it, and really relieve a little bit the burden on everybody. And then if we move more together in groups, where we support each other, like peer groups, then it really helps a lot. So I would say spread the message is the most important, but of course on the longer term, we would like this to be integrated in the health system, in the education system, or in the migration system, different systems in our countries, so that we can really strengthen the psychosocial foundation for everybody.
Perfect. Thank you, Katrien. We have one question. Through which partners/agents do beneficiaries receive such help in the field? Partners and agents in the field.
Could you repeat?
One question. Through which partners and agents do beneficiaries receive such help in the field? They asking for concrete partners and agents that you work with to implement your approach.
In the first place, we are directly an organization in countries. We are established as organization in 180 countries, so you can easily find us directly. IHV, in cooperation with the Art of Living. In addition, we also work in partnership with different organizations, for example, in Lithuania with the International Organization of Migration, with the Red Cross, with Stiprus Kartu, in Germany also with Red Cross and different refugee and integration agencies. But what I can do is to give or maybe at the end, you saw the website we have. There you can find all the different contacts and workshops and contact people. So if there is any specific country or city or place you would like to have some services, you can also just contact us and we can find.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katrien, for your presentation. We do have a couple more questions, but let's leave them at the end, just so we can leave enough time to Alketa Lascu. So I welcome you, Alketa, to begin your presentation, and thanks a lot, Katrien, for your interesting presentation today. Alketa, your microphone is off.
Yes.
We give the floor.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Katrien. So I will be sharing my presentation now with you. Hope will work out. Can you see it? Someone can confirm?
Yes, I can see.
Yes, now?
Yes.
So thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Alketa. I'm a psychologist by background, and I'm here to talk to you today about my experience actually as a trainer on the movement, games, and sports and creativity methodology. I would like to start this presentation by sharing my own personal experience a few years ago, actually, when I was just graduated as a psychologist and working in one school, while I got in touch for the first time with the methodology. As a brand new psychologist, one thing that I was really feeling the need that wanted to improve further was the fact that to have very tangible and concrete methodologies which I could deploy and use it with the children in the schools that I was working. And back then, where I saw this notifications that they were looking for some animators, facilitators to be trained on this methodology. From the name, it sounds very interesting to me. So I decided to apply to be as a trainee, and afterwards my journey as a trainer and animator with MGSC methodology started. Today, I was asked to share with you a bit of how this methodology has been coming as an evidence-based methodology when it comes to mental health and psychosocial support for Ukrainian children and youth in the context of displacement, but as well in the context of conflict. As I will be elaborating a bit more during the slides, this methodology is quite universal in terms of the countries where it has been implemented, and basically having first the implementation in humanitarian settings and moving to more development settings. So as you probably know, I work for Terdezom, and in Terdezom we have what we call the mental health and psychosocial framework, in which this methodology it is embedded as well, and where we mostly make reference to the so-called 5 well-being pillars. Katrien talked a lot about resilience, but as well in TDH we have a strong resilience framework, and which it is built around the ability of individuals to be able to cope, to be able to transform in face of the trauma, but as well to be able to rebound and to be able to have the skills and knowledge how to work with and live with trauma as well. We implement the socio-ecological approach and, of course, the interagency steering committee intervention pyramid. And we see in terms of our MHPSS interventions as a combination and consideration and the realization of all of these 5 core elements. At the end of the presentation, I will be sharing with you some resources if you are interested specifically in one of these pillars. Here, I just wanted to give you the illustration in terms of the full background, but I will be focusing more in terms of the MGSC as a methodology. So first, just to elaborate a bit on the acronym, what it is MGSC, it is movement, games, sports, and creativity. And it is really through the different activities that are implemented with children, it tries to impact them at 3 levels. First, it is the head, the age, the first age, and it is really working on the different skills that are related with the mental capacities. After, we have the body, the physical abilities, and here it has a lot to do as the core, it are games and sports with the flexibility skills, agility, speed, and so on. But the other level, the third one, are psychosocial capacities. And with psychosocial capacities, we mostly refer to the sense of self-esteem that the children and youth who are attending activities, the improvement on the self-esteem that they experience, but as well on their own capacities and skills to be part of a team, because MGSC activities are team activities. Mostly the target group are adults, so basically teachers, sport teachers, animators, and social workers, psychologists that are in daily interaction with children and youth. The methodology has different activities adapted mostly to this variety of ages, so it starts from 4 to 14 years old. And it is a really flexible methodology, and it is not functioning as a curriculum, but as well can be very well used through different isolated sessions. What are some of the prerequisites in order to be able to implement this methodology? First, it is really has to do a lot with the staff capacity and skills, and really to have individuals, professionals, adults who are very positive and motivated to be able to move a bit around, and they are believers as well on the impact that movements has in overall well-being of individuals. And what we mostly have been having the experience, we have, like in many countries, have been child protection workers, but has been community workers in community centers, social workers, psychologists in schools, educators in kindergartens, so a variety of professionals, but not, and I want to emphasize this, it is not as a prerequisite to have a background in psychology, but more the so-called lay professionals are the primary target as well. It is, in terms of time commitment, quite demanding, especially that's why we speak about having professionals who are in daily contact with the children, which will be making much more easier the implementation of the full packages. So usually it is advertised that children are doing at least once a week a psychosocial activity, an MGSC activity, and it is this running in a regular basis. In terms of the capacity building, we put a lot of emphasis in terms of providing coaching sessions through regular technical support, that it is going from 3 to 6 months, usually, to the animators that are trained in the methodology. As I said, this is kind of a methodology that has quite a lot of story, and I wanted to list here some of the key historical events that are related with the methodology. The first time, actually, it was implemented at the end of the 90s in Iran, and at that time, the idea was mostly the implementation happened within the context of sport for development. After we moved to Brazil, and it was the first time actually that it was made, the attempt to structure sport activities through more psychosocial aims and objectives, and still within humanitarian conflict resolution settings. After the methodology, it was implemented in Sri Lanka and Middle East, and moving further to the implementation as part of the MOVE project in Eastern Europe with the countries such as Romania, Moldova, Albania, and Kosovo. As well, in Ukraine, we have been implementing it for some times, but let's say, especially in Eastern Europe, there is now more than 15 years almost that the methodology has been used in a regular basis. After the completion of the MOVE project, we kind of upgraded a bit the methodology, and we added more elements regarding creativity, because we noticed, and I will be sharing a bit with you later on, the fact that the movements, games, and different activities that we have been using are as well positively influencing the creativity skills of the kids. But specifically to move on and engage, it was put a lot of more focus to the children and youth engagement in the conduction and in the implementation of the activities. What is the approach in a very, like in a nutshell? The reference, it is coming from a contextualized approach to resilience, which is really acknowledging what most of the professionals working in the field know, that actually the impact the stressful life events have and situations have, it's like really on the feeling of power, and it is significantly impacting the children and youth. They feel powerless, and the sense of hope, it is significantly being affected. And it as well, the methodology, it is recognizing the fact that crisis affects children and youth, feeling this fact that most of the connections or the connections that they had previously, either in the context of displacement or not, are being affected. Therefore, as the methodology is focusing on adults, that they are providing activities for children with psychosocial aims, this is what is really emphasizing the fact that those connections that are established with children attending the activities organized in the community center, in the camp, or wherever it is, are having a positive influence in the sense of restoring this sense of connections that the children have. Of course, with the essential support in place, it is very important that they are able to maintain relationships, to get to know others. And it is really a tool in which you can really see children and youth having a lot of fun. So besides learning and developing new skills, they really enjoy playing. The methodology in itself, it is based on the so-called experiential learning, and where actually the structure of the activity is like this. The first time they are having a game, they are experimenting the game, they take feedback, a second stop of the game, and they ask for feedback. So the children are being asked how did they feel during this activity, how confident and how are the rules talking to them, if they would like to change any rule, and they reconnect again, and they re-experience the game. So that's why the whole methodology is organized on this concept. For Zom has been very important actually to be able to learn and take some stock and learnings when it comes to the implementation of the methodology in different settings. So therefore, we partnered with the Queen's Margaret University and Zom to really try to dig in and conduct a proper research when it comes to the impact that MGS had as an approach in terms of psychosocial support. And what the research is showing to us, that it is MGSC as an approach to psychosocial support has contributing significantly to the children and youth sense of stability. So it is really giving stability to the children. It is really addressing the development of chills and the levels that I mentioned at the physical, emotional, cognitive level, and as well social levels. by including feedback and reflection poses that I mentioned before, there it's very important that to take a bit of distance from the children, for the children themselves, and they can confront their own attitudes actually and patience into putting into practice this kind of feedbacks and reflections. And MGS activities can really serve as catalyzers to facilitate as more in terms of the different social and educational activities. And they are actually a very good entry point if, for instance, for any organization that it is working in either humanitarian or development settings, being a very attractive methodology for the fun and the development part that it brings, is really a good way to attract the children to be part of different activities. But in the same time, it helps to put these services in other contexts as well. But however, I wanted to share with you today some of the limitations of the methodology. So just to give as well the idea that MGSC is not just for children to have to play a game with rules in practice, like just to have some rules, but is as well a very good tool that it has the pros and that I listed before, but some other challenges as well in terms of putting it into practice. Usually we have noticed that out of this many years of experimenting this methodology and implementing it, the cost and lengths of the training of the adults sometimes and like have been perceived quite a lot, especially when it comes for the core training of animators, that in the initial, when we started to implement it, it was 2 weeks. So 2 weeks training sessions especially in emergency settings or humanitarians, it's a lot, and it is kind of a luxury to have it. Therefore, it was as well a difficulty to establish collaborative links between MGSC, so like this kind of a more light approach with other protection services that might be provided. Sometimes adult professionals, they really don't, they prefer to just have the children play and not have rules and reflections and feedback and measure the impact that that this game had in terms of mental health or physical abilities, but just have the children play without having any intention or objective. As well, what we have seen is like, especially considering the complex needs that children have in humanitarian settings, MGSC only per se, as just an individual methodology used, might be just partially meeting the needs that and the demands of the beneficiaries, children and youth. We have used MGSC in the Ukrainian crisis response, and for all of you that you probably are already familiar with WellU project, and I know that some of my colleagues have been sharing in previous webinars organized within this framework some of the outcomes and as well some of the challenges, especially when it comes to the implementation. I wanted just to share with you some of the strengths that we have seen, especially from the implementation in Romania, Greece, and as well Hungary. The first one is the fact that MGSC has been showing that is a good tool to promote engagement, and it's really effectively engaging vulnerable children and youth, and especially in terms of developing further their personal and social skills. It is promoting resilience and psychosocial well-being. And as well, we have seen the impact that had, especially in adults professionals, in terms of providing really these social, methodological, and technical skills. And we have a whole framework and that are really with specific indicators on how we measure this with the development in terms of the adults. Some of the challenges that we have seen is quite demanding in terms of the time of the staff, and as well it is especially if it is provided within the project, the funding issue, it is an issue, and to be able to sustain trained staff. is being challenging, and as well gender balance and age appropriate communication has been quite of a learning, especially in terms of being more gender diverse and having more children from different genders as well included. And again, the need for institutionalization and support. We have been managing to institutionalize the methodology. For instance, in Romania, this methodology was it became part of the curriculum provided by the Academy of Sports in Romania, but in other countries we have not been so successful. So this is still a challenge, especially within the context of the Ukrainian crisis, have been quite a challenge. If you are interested to implement this methodology, what I would like to suggest in terms of best practices that research has well provided some of the recommendations is really to try to include MGS methodology in order to be able to answer to the priority needs of the community members and be really mindful and sensitive to the cultural different religious practices, to emphasize the integration of traditional games as much as possible. And for that, actually, we have even a resource, is a toolbox with full of traditional games that are converted with the psychosocial objectives, and has been quite widely used, and at least from the feedback has been quite good. To try to hire activity facilitators from the community served is very important, and mostly if you have contacts or community centers or like working in refugee settings, please try to consider having trained these animators or facilitators, to try to have this as part of other activities that you have in your programs. So MGS can be a very good addition to it. We have actually learned that by training children and youth as coaches or coach assistants or animator facilitators, call it however you want, might be good, especially in terms of involving them and co-designing and co-creating new activities with them. What else? We had really to diversify activities, and I have to say here that MGSC was developed in a context where children were not playing on mobiles and we didn't have a video game. So MGSC is really a face-to-face activity, and really it is important to be mindful of that element, that probably even for us at Zone we have now to catch the speed with the recent developments. So try to diversify activities in order to have children and youth always interested on the methodology. To try to involve children and parents and caregivers. We have done this in some countries, but we have seen it that is a good tool actually for parents as well. And we have implemented even with sometimes even with parents, but in a short scale, not larger scale. I mentioned as well the importance to give young participants a caregiver role, and if you are struggling with resources, very good opportunity is to train volunteers. We had very good examples and practices where we train volunteers, students from social work departments or psychology or other, teachers that they have been very eager to learn, but as well implement activities. Important as well to establish a peer support structure among MGSC animators where they can exchange and learn. It is really a big community group of MGSC animators created across the world now, but we really encourage this to have it. And really continually refine, we are doing the MGS methodology by fostering exchanges on best practices. Here is a list of the resources that I will just screen through it, and of course this will be available afterwards. You can find some of them. So the first manual is the Working with Children and Their Environment, that has 18 practical training modules to provide with to people working with children. The Laugh, Run and Move to Develop Together, that are games with psychosocial aim. The traditional games for child protection, that, as I mentioned, it has 15 traditional games from Eastern Europe that have been contextualized and having an MHPSS framework objective. and as well the psychosocial activities manual for children and adolescents. So I will stop here. Thank you very much, and I remain available. Here is my email for any question you might have besides now the webinar. Yeah, now I can see you as well. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Alketa. We have a couple questions on the chat. The first one is, how do you ensure that the NGSC is culturally and contextually appropriate? And I will mix it there with what are core safeguarding principles that are being taken into account when implementing NGSC, for instance, in the context of children in high-risk environments like Ukraine. Yeah.
Yes. So how we have, what I can say that it was more, for us, we have seen always MGSC as an evolving methodology. So and giving a lot of priority to the fact that different countries have contextualized it, and how the contextualization process happened was through having different consultations with most beneficiaries, either children or adult professionals, on what they have already in place, and really try to contextualize. A very good element actually that it was a lot has to do with contextualization was when we developed these traditional games, and the manual is purely contextualized, is really grouping different games that have been implemented in these countries and that they have this psychosocial aim now. In terms of safeguards, for us, what is, as every program that RDZOM it is implementing, we have the do no harm principle at the core of our interventions, and we really we are quite strict in terms of receiving the consent of the children, or as well of the legal guardians, the parents who are for the kids who are attending different activities. And we have our child safeguarding mechanisms and procedures already put it in place, and we have as well complaint and feedback referral mechanisms where they can reach out. Yeah. Sorry, try to do it in a nutshell very quickly, but yeah, that's more or less what we have. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Alketa. We actually had quite a few questions, but since we are running out of time, let's have one last question. So someone says, great presentation, both. Alketa, you have mentioned 5 foundational principles at the beginning of your presentation. If you could please elaborate a little bit on those.
Yes, actually, those are the so-called, what we called in TDH as the 5 well-being pillars that we have been working and adapting. I can share later on, like here on the chat, we have our MHPSS framework and a summary of the MHPSS pillars. So yeah, I can share this. It's quite an extensive resource.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Actually, we do have a lot of comments. They would like to know where they can find a collection of traditional games and in general, more information on NGS. So it would be great if you could post a link on the chat.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
And okay, someone is asking for the slides. All right, great. Before we conclude the webinar, may I ask my colleague Heidi to kindly launch the final tool for our webinar today? Thanks a lot, Alketa. We'll just, it will take a couple minutes and then we get back. We kindly ask our attendees to help us with this final poll. Okay, I see that almost coming at the end. Perfect. I think we can end the pulse, Heidi. I invite Katrien for one final question. I think this question applies to the two of you. Okay, I received a question from colleagues. They would like if you could provide us with examples on how both methodologies have fostered resilience and social inclusion among displaced youth in your experience working in Ukraine. Katrien, would you like to start?
So the question is about resilience for youth in Ukraine.
Exactly, resilience and social inclusion among displaced youth.
Yeah. It's very interesting because just this week we had this conference in Lithuania where we provided these workshops for 2,500 Ukrainian children inside Ukrainian schools and also in mixed schools and in camps. And we have a lot of benefits, no, in terms of, first of all, the individual well-being, where the stress and the sleep and the worries and the anxiety is reduced, but then also this sense of confidence and hope and energy to go forward. And then also the capacity to actually engage, because if there's too much stress in the system, we notice, right, we cannot really engage with education, with learning, with out of school activities, connecting with peers, with parents or teachers, etc. So many times when we do the programs for the children, the teachers say, oh, we also want this. And then the parents say, oh, we also need this, because they see the change in the children. And then very funny is also when the children tell their parents, hey, you should do the breathing because you are shouting at me. Yeah, so it starts from the individual level and it transmits to the relational, the social aspects. And we have also examples where the children, the grades are going up, they learn better, they absorb better, they integrate in the school, while before they were maybe isolated. So the benefits are absolutely multiple. And I also saw some questions in the chat regarding research. If anybody here is interested in research, what is the psychosocial impact of what the psychosocial impact of this kind of programs on social integration, we would love to cooperate on this kind of research, because now we just have evidence of hundreds or thousands of people, but it's still anecdotal, right? In a certain
Thank you, Katrien. Alketa?
Yes, I was trying to think in terms of what can be more useful for the participants, but maybe the example that it came to my mind in terms of how we measure resilience, it's kind of a concept, how you measure resilience. So, and how you are, I can say that it's really by concretely, we have different tools in terms of really observations, conducting observations that are mostly in terms of the kids that when they are attending the different activities, but as well and we have action research that is specifically oriented and has a certain list of questions that are focused on the MHPSS well-being, but as well in how to, for them, it is mostly a self-disclosure where the children are able to share themselves, how they felt during the activity, what is the change that they see within themselves. But for me, if I can illustrate it from one activity, I don't know if it is an example that evidence-based, but if you are working with children who have different difficulties due to the trauma that they have been experiencing to concentrate, is an indicator the fact that during a 30 minutes activity, they are able to complete all the activity, to be attentive, to be patient, and respect the rules of the activity. And really you can see this very easily, and they are really able at this stage to cope with what has been happening, but as well to kind of have a bit of stability and in their own routine. And by attending regular activities, you can easily see in terms of how their social skills evolve, and movement and games and sports overall. It is a great tool, because even in the context of displacement, you don't need to talk the language, because children can very easily experience that. And you can see within the regularity of the activities how they are much more able to transform themselves, even in taking initiatives, co-creating, being volunteering for other things. So those will be some of the concrete examples that I'm thinking.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both Alketa and Katrien. Then to conclude our webinar today, I will display information. If you have more information on, if you would like more information on the WellU project, are you able to see my screen, right? Yes, great. Here are more information on the WellU project, which the project is also implementing NGSC. On our website, you can find more information on our programs. And as Alketa has already mentioned, the WellU project was implemented in 4 different countries in Europe. And here is a slide with further information from the Peace of Mind project. We really thank you all. We really hope that these discussions provided you with valuable tools to better understand and address the mental health needs for those affected by trauma and crisis situations. And our hope is that this session has inspired you to apply the strategies discussed today in your work and seek out further capacity building opportunities that can enhance your impact in mental health support. And remember that the knowledge that we share today is not just theoretical, but is meant to empower you to make a tangible difference in the life of individuals that are currently facing crisis. So we thank everyone for your active participation and engagement today. We encourage you to continue the conversation and collaborate with one another as we work towards most effective mental health support for those in need. We will be sending the slides, the recording from the webinar today. On the chat, we have shared more information on how you can learn more from the 2 approaches discussed today. And finally, big thanks to Alketa and Katrien for sharing these amazing and very important methodologies with us today. Thank you so much, everyone. And yeah, I see in the chat a lot of attendees appreciating the speakers today as well. And yeah, thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.